What makes someone a sinner? Someone pursuing fun and leisure, someone not following religion or even going against it, someone liberating others from their misery in a harsh socio-political situation. And honestly, is there really a fixed meaning for what it means to sin and what it means to be a sinner? Or does it shift with context? And this is where Sinner makes its mark. And today we're diving deeper into Sinners to unpack all its layers. I don't think I've ever waited this desperately for a streaming release as I did for this one. Friends, family, especially Golu and Ustad, really hyped up this movie for me, in addition to some very prominent voices in cinema. So when it finally dropped on Geo Hotstar last weekend, I jumped in immediately. Directed by Ryan Coogler and starring Michael B. Jordan, the dream duo from Black Panther. This is a folk horror period piece with vampires at its core. But honestly, it's just genre agnostic, touching on horror, drama, music, and social commentary all at once. Now, before we dive any deeper into this movie, this is your spoiler warning. If you haven't watched it, please save this video, watch the movie, and make sure you come back to this video later. Now, the movie is based in 1930s Mississippi, where the Smokestack twins return from Chicago to set up a juke club in this tiny town. They pull in a cousin who's a gifted musician, they pull in a washed up blues musician from their town, and then pick up some friends along the way to help them with their opening night. But as the night unfolds, the gifts turn into curses and the club descends into absolute bloodlust. Now, what initially drew me into this movie was the hype around Coogler and Michael B. Jordan, but also the promise of horror. I really regret missing this movie in the theaters just because all the blockbusters were really draining my wallet. But even on streaming, Sinners proves to be a rich, ambitious, layered, and nuanced film that is worth dissecting. I'd like to start this deep dive by first talking about the themes and the message in Sinners. At its heart, Sinners is about far more than just vampires. It's about racism, music, temptation, liberty, life, death, and the really thin line between good and evil. Throughout its runtime, this movie keeps asking us what makes someone good and someone evil? And even more importantly, what defines if someone is good and someone is evil? Is it written in the bloodline to be passed on from one generation to the next? Or is it society, religion, or law that decide what is good and what is evil? And can actions ever be judged in clear black and white? Or are they always just different shades of grey? And even the idea of gifts plays into this. Are they liberations or are they just curses that we spend our entire lives just containing? For me personally, this layering is where this movie truly shines. In spite of all these heavy themes and these heavy questions, I really left this movie with an itch. I wanted deeper dives into certain elements in this movie that were just barely touched upon. Next up, let's talk about the performances. Michael B. Jordan is always magnetic. He's got this gravitas, this swagger about him that I just absolutely love. Except for Fantastic or Frontastic, however you want to pronounce it. He carries both his roles effortlessly with his swagger and his gravitas. And I really got to point out there is something strikingly similar between his aura and that of Jamie Foxx. Miles Caton as the gifted musician and their cousin is an absolute revelation. Remember his name. I have a feeling that he's going to be a really big deal in the years to come. My childhood crush, Haley Steinfeld, was in this movie as well, although she did not have a lot of screen time. So there's really not enough for me to talk about there. And this was the surprise package. Delroy Lindo as Delta Slim was just on another planet. Hands down, the X factor in this film. A drunk, washed up blues man who swings between comic relief, philosophical musings, and raw vulnerability. Honestly, I wasn't a big fan of his in Gone in 60 Seconds, one of my all time favorite movies. But the dude is just unforgettable in this movie. And then there's Jack O'Connell, the Vampire King. I'd only known him from Unbroken, a movie again that I absolutely love. But here, as the antagonist, he doesn't fail to give you the creeps and the chills. His presence is equal parts terrifying and charming. His Scottish folk songs haunt you. His persuasive monologues carry a lot of weight. And his comic timing, whether it was intentional or unintentional, was just sheer magic. Easily one of the most compelling characters in this movie. Now, let's talk about the direction and the style. And hands down, this is one of the most stylish films I've ever watched in my life. The 1930s southern towns and the cotton plantations just feel so real and so authentic. And you're not going to hear me say this often, but I love the saturated colors in this movie because they fit in perfectly. Now, the most impressive in this aspect is the technical choice of merging IMAX with Ultra Panavision. And this was a first in film history because IMAX is kind of more evened out with 1.43 is to 1 aspect ratio, whereas Ultra Panavision is like this really wide shot that goes to a ratio of 2.76 is to 1. Now, the director and the DOP used Ultra Panavision for scenes where they wanted to capture the entire landscape in its entirety, and used the IMAX aspect ratio in moments where they really wanted to bring your focus in to the characters on the screen. Now, this choice could have been a crash and burn, but this dude somehow made it work, and it is phenomenal. And it is bold and it is effective, and every single frame in this movie keeps you hooked in. Now, the pacing of this movie was far more even in the first two acts. The third act kind of felt a little rushed and a little convoluted, and I just felt like there was too much packed into the resolution and the conclusion of the movie. Having said that, I still rate this movie far higher than Killers of the Flower Moon. And the music was the best part about this movie. In Sinners, you've got this rich tapestry of blues, country, Scottish folk, Afro tribal, even soul fusion tracks. The music in this movie isn't just something to fill in voids in the background, but rather it is a narrative device and a very essential narrative device in this entire movie. The music across genres and all the shades carries pain, heritage, and identity. And trust me when I say this. As someone who loves blues, I couldn't have imagined a better movie for that genre. Cinematically, Sinners does pull in a lot of elements from Django Unchained, 12 Years a Slave, even Dunkirk and The Mandalorian in its camera work. Despite that, Sinners still carves its own path. And unlike the templated horror of most mainstream titles, this film actually decides to join a list of rare films that decided to reinvent the horror genre while still honoring it. And I'm talking about names like Constantine, Fear Street, Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, and the Final Destination series. And I'm fairly certain while watching this video, Golu is going to be yelling about the haunting of Bly Manor and the haunting of Hill House.
Here, boy.
And another important thing in this movie that I absolutely loved was how it treated racism differently. Instead of just showing black communities as perpetual victims, it portrays a spectrum of individuals from that community. Some criminals, some workers, some vagrants, and some preachers. You see, you hear, and you sense their shared trauma. But that trauma is not the only thing that defines these characters. And honestly, I feel that is Ryan Coogler's biggest strength. Whether it was Black Panther or whether it is this one, he always manages to find a different angle to racism and figures out how to fit it into his movie. Now let's move on to the strengths and weaknesses of this movie. The biggest strength of this movie definitely lies in its music. It's rich, it's layered, and it really gets stuck in your brain for all the right reasons. Secondly, I loved how all the first line characters were so well fleshed out, especially the nuanced differences between the twins. Next, the visuals of this movie were just on another level. Whether it's the production design, the costume design, the whole play with the aspect ratios and the cameras, and above all, the rhetorical commentary that all of us are sinners in someone's eyes, even though we may be pretending to be saints. In terms of the weaknesses, there are two prominent weaknesses that stood out to me. The first was that clunky exposition dump in Act 2. Did we really need to be told that those were actually vampires? Garlic, silver, sunlight. I think most people at this stage know enough about vampires to have it figured out already. And the second weakness. I felt like the ending of this movie was a little muddled. Seeing Stack and Mary towards the end of the movie just confused the resolution and it confused me. Now, granted, they did justify Stack's survival in the movie, but Mary's wasn't. So I want to wrap up my deep dive on a good note. I'm more of a bad news first and good news later kind of a guy. So I want to talk about my personal take, my favorite bits, my favorite scenes from the movie. Now, there were really two scenes that stood out the most for me. First was when we see Smoke go into town to get all his supplies for opening night. Within 5 minutes, we get to see the best parts about this character, about how he conducts business, how negotiation is absolutely non negotiable in all transactions, and he's got this charm and this swagger and this badassery about him, and just how he deals with all the people was just so magnificent. Second was the Preacher Boy's performance at the Juke Club. That entire sequence with all the music and the dancing and the visuals was just so rich and it was so loaded. And this entirely rich fusion of folk, tribal, indigenous, modern cultures all together, it is just unforgettable, man. And my favorite characters in this movie, in no particular order, were Smoke, Remick the Vampire King, Tilda Slim, and Preacher Boy. Each of these characters really left a mark on me. At the end of it all, Sinners is a really thoughtful take on morality and the perception of good and evil, of sin and virtue. It asks us who or what really defines what sin is and what virtue is. And it reminds us those definitions shift constantly. For me, it's a good movie. I enjoyed it. I had a great time. It's not a perfect movie. It had its fair share of flaws. I don't think it's really as good as all the hype surrounding it, but I'd still say that it's an ambitious film. It's layered, it's nuanced, and it's definitely worth your time, at least for one watch. So if you're thinking, what are you going to watch this weekend? I'd say probably give Sinners a go. And just see what you take away from it. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button, drop your thoughts in the comments below, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to TMB for the latest and the best in pop culture. Until next time, this is the Millennial Bard signing off.
Here, boy.